The second she placed her hand on her stomach and smiled, I felt my wedding day slip out from under me. I was mid-toast. My glass was raised, my voice slightly shaking, not from nerves, but from everything it took to get there. Years of saving, planning, healing, and forgiving. Especially her. My beautiful sister. I had just said, forcing a smile in her direction. Who has always? I'm pregnant. She didn't even wait for me to finish. The room went silent for half a second, then exploded. Gasps. Cheers. Chairs scraping. My mother stood up so fast she nearly knocked her glass over. People rushed toward her, surrounding her like she was the bride. Phones came out. Hugs. Tears and me. I was still standing there. Holding my glass, invisible, I slowly lowered it. My husband looked at me, confused. Did you know? I shook my head. Of course I didn't. This wasn't an accident. This was her pattern. She had always done this, birthdays, graduations, any moment that wasn't hers. She'd find a way to take it. And I had spent years pretending it didn't bother me. But this time it was my wedding. I sat down quietly while the noise grew louder. Someone had already started chanting her name. My aunt was crying like she'd just heard the greatest news of her life. No one noticed me sit. No one noticed my untouched toast. And in that moment, something inside me went completely still. Not angry. Not even hurt anymore. Just clear. I leaned toward my husband and whispered, "Let it play out." He looked at me carefully. "Are you okay?" I nodded. "I will be." I stood back up, gently tapped my glass again. It took longer this time, but eventually the room settled. My sister was still glowing, one hand on her stomach, the center of everything. Perfect. I smiled. "Wow," I said softly, letting out a small laugh. "I guess my family really knows how to make a moment unforgettable." A few people chuckled awkwardly. I looked directly at her. "Congratulations, truly." She smiled wider. "Victory." Then I turned back to the room. "But since we're sharing big news tonight." I paused, letting curiosity build. "I think it's only fair I finish what I started." The room quieted again. And this time, they listened. "I wasn't just thanking people tonight." I continued. "I was also going to share something important. Something I've kept private for a long time. Because I didn't want it to overshadow anything." I let that hang. My sister's smile flickered. "I spent the last 3 years building something from nothing. While working 2 jobs. While being told I was too emotional, too sensitive, and not focused enough." I glanced at her briefly, then back at the crowd. "And today, this morning, actually, I signed the final papers." People leaned in. "I'm officially the owner of the company I've been quietly building." A ripple moved through the room. "It's now valued at just over 2 million? Silence. Not the distracted kind. The real kind. My mother slowly sat back down. My aunt stopped mid-tear, and my sister. Her hand dropped from her stomach. I kept my voice calm. Steady. I didn't announce it earlier because I wanted tonight to be about love, about this moment. I reached for my husband's hand. But I guess timing matters, doesn't it? A few people shifted uncomfortably. I smiled again, softer this time. "So yes, there's new life coming into the family. And that's beautiful." Then I raised my glass slightly. "But tonight, I also celebrate the life I built for myself, quietly, patiently, without needing a spotlight." No one clapped immediately. They just looked. At me, really looked. For the first time that evening. Then, slowly, the applause started. Not loud, but genuine. It spread across the room, steady and growing, not explosive like before, but grounded. Respectful. I sat down, my hands no longer shaking. My sister didn't say another word for the rest of the night. Later, during the reception, people came up to me one by one, asking questions, congratulating me, telling me they had no idea. Exactly. That was the point. I hadn't needed their attention before. I didn't need it now. But I had taken back my moment, without screaming, without causing a scene, without lowering myself to her level. Just truth, at the right time. As the night wound down, my sister finally approached me. Her confidence was gone, replaced with something tighter, quieter. "You could have told me," she said. I met her eyes calmly. "You could have waited." She opened her mouth, then closed it. For once, she had nothing. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small standing next to her. I felt done. Not angry. Not bitter, just free. Because the most shocking part of that night wasn't her announcement. It was that I finally stopped letting her steal anything from me ever again. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Because the real shift didn't happen in that moment, it happened in the days that followed. The morning after the wedding, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages. calls. Even people I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly remembered I existed. Why didn't you tell us? That's incredible. I had no idea you were doing all that. I read them quietly, sitting on the edge of my bed, still in that strange emotional space, where everything feels distant, but sharp at the same time. My husband walked in with coffee, handed me a cup and said, "You broke something last night." I looked up. "What do you mean?" He smiled slightly. "Not in a bad way. You just changed the way people see you." I didn't answer right away, because deep down I knew that wasn't entirely true. I hadn't changed. I had just stopped hiding. Later that afternoon, my mother called. Her voice was softer than usual. "Careful. Why didn't you tell me about the business?" I took a slow breath, because every time I tried to share something important, it somehow stopped being about me. Silence. Then she said, almost defensively, "That's not fair." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. "I'm not trying to fight, Mom. I'm just done competing for space in my own life." Another silence. This one heavier. "I didn't realize you felt that way," she said finally. "I know," I replied. "That's kind of the problem." We ended the call without resolution, but for once, I didn't feel the need to fix it. That evening my sister texted me. Not a call, not a visit. A text. "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied, "Sir." She came over the next day. No dramatic entrance, no glowing smile, no performance, just her. She sat across from me, fidgeting with her hands. "I didn't plan it like that," she said quickly. "The announcement. It just happened." I tilted my head slightly. "Like all the other times." She flinched. "That was new." "I didn't think it would hurt you that much," she said, quieter now. I leaned back, studying her. "That's exactly it," I said. "You didn't think?" She looked down. And for a moment I saw something I hadn't seen before. Not confidence. Not attention-seeking. Just insecurity. "I always feel like I'm behind you," she admitted. "Like no matter what I do, it's never enough unless people are looking at me." That caught me off guard. Because in my entire life, I had always felt like I was the one behind her. Funny how that works. I didn't soften completely, but I didn't harden either. "That's not my responsibility," I said gently. "And it never was." She nodded slowly, tears forming but not falling. "I know." We sat there in silence. Not the tense kind. Just honest. "I'm not angry anymore," I said after a while. "But I'm also not going back to the way things were." She swallowed. "What does that mean?" "It means I won't shrink to make you comfortable. I won't stay quiet to keep the peace. And I won't pretend it's okay when you cross a line." She nodded again. "I understand." And for once it felt like she actually did. Weeks passed. Life moved on. But something had shifted permanently. At family dinners, people listened when I spoke. When I shared updates about my business, no one interrupted. No one redirected the conversation. And my sister. She didn't try to take over. Not once. One evening, as we were all sitting together, my aunt started asking me about expansion plans. Real questions. Thoughtful ones. Halfway through answering, I noticed my sister watching me. Not with jealousy, not with competition. Just watching. Later, she pulled me aside. "I'm proud of you," she said. Simple. No spotlight. No audience. And somehow that meant more than anything she'd ever done before. I smiled. "Thank you." Then she added, almost shyly, "And I'm going to try to do things differently." I believed her. Not because of her words, but because, for the first time in our lives, she hadn't needed a moment to prove something. And neither had I. Because the truth is, the most powerful part of that entire story wasn't the announcement. It wasn't the silence. It wasn't even the reveal. It was the moment I realized I didn't need to fight for attention anymore. Because when you finally know your worth, you don't need to compete. You just stand still and let the world. I didn't expect the ripple effect to reach so far. A month after the wedding, I got an invitation to speak at a small business event. Nothing huge, but meaningful. The kind of room where people actually listen, not just clap. I almost said no. Old habits. Staying quiet. Staying behind. But then I remembered that night, the glass in my hand, the silence, the shift. So I said yes. The day of the event, I stood backstage, heart pounding in a very familiar way. Not fear exactly, just the weight of being seen. When they called my name, I walked out slowly. No spotlight stealing, no interruption. Just me. I told my story simply. No exaggeration, no drama. How I built everything from scratch. How I kept going even when no one noticed. How silence can either break you or build you. And when I finished, the applause felt different from anything I'd ever heard before. Not loud, but deep. Afterward, people came up to me, not just to congratulate me, but to connect, to share their own stories, their own struggles with being overlooked. For the first time, my voice wasn't just heard. It mattered. That night, when I got home, I saw a message from my sister. "I watched your talk. I didn't even know she had access to the stream. It was really good," she added. "You didn't rush. You didn't try to impress anyone. You just stood there like you belonged." I stared at that line for a while, because that was it. That was everything. "I do belong," I replied. She sent a simple, "I know." A few weeks later, my mother invited us both over for dinner. I hesitated at first. Old patterns don't disappear overnight. But when I walked in, something felt different. Subtle, but real. My mother hugged me a little longer than usual. At the table, she asked me about my work, and she didn't interrupt, didn't redirect, didn't compare. She just listened. Halfway through dinner, she said something that caught me completely off guard. "I think I missed a lot," she admitted quietly. "I was so focused on keeping things balanced between you two, that I didn't see how unbalanced it already was." I didn't respond immediately. Not because I didn't have something to say, but because I didn't need to rush to fill the space anymore. "It's okay," I said finally. "I see it now too." And that was enough. No blame. No digging up the past. Just acknowledgement. Later that night, as we were clearing the table, my sister bumped into me lightly. "Hey," she said almost casually. "I have my first doctor's appointment tomorrow." I looked at her. "Are you nervous?" She nodded. "A little." I smiled. "You'll be fine." She hesitated, then added, "Would you want to come with me?" That question carried more weight than it sounded like, because it wasn't about the appointment. It was about everything that had changed between us. I thought about it for a second. Then I said, "Yeah, I'll come." And I meant it. The next day, sitting beside her in that quiet waiting room, I realized something I never thought I would feel again around her. Peace. Not forced, not fragile. Just there. She didn't try to draw attention. Didn't make it about anyone else. She just held my hand for a second before her name was called. "Thanks for being here," she whispered. And for the first time in my life, it didn't feel like I was standing in her shadow. Or she in mine. We were just two people, trying to grow, trying to do better. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought back to my wedding. To that moment. The interruption, the silence, the shift. I used to think the shocking part was what she did. But now I understand. The real shock was what happened after. I didn't break. I didn't fight. I didn't chase the spotlight. I simply stepped into my own space and stayed there. And somehow, that changed everything. Not just for me, but for all of us. Because when one person finally stops playing the old roles, the entire story has no choice. But two. I thought everything had settled into something stable. Then came the baby shower. Of course it did. The invitation was soft, almost careful, pastel colors, my sister's name in gentle script, a small note at the bottom. "Would mean a lot if you came. Sex." A few months ago, I would have read between the lines. Now, I just read what was there, so I went. The house was full when I arrived. Lauder, decorations, that warm kind of noise that usually hides tension if you listen closely enough. But this time it didn't. When I walked in, a few heads turned, then more. Not dramatically, just awareness. Recognition. My sister spotted me from across the room. Her face lit up, but it wasn't that old, performative brightness. It was real. "You came," she said, walking over. Of course I did. She hugged me quick, tight, sincere. And then something unexpected happened. She took my hand and gently pulled me toward the center of the room. "I want you to meet everyone properly," she said. I almost laughed. Properly. Like I hadn't been in these rooms my whole life. But I let her. She introduced me, not as my sister, not as a side note, but by my name. "And this is her," she said at one point, smiling. "The one I told you about. She built her company from nothing. No exaggeration. No overshadowing. Just acknowledgement." I nodded politely, exchanged a few words, kept it simple. But inside, something shifted again. Not loud. Not overwhelming. Just quiet pride. Later, when everyone had settled, my mother stood up. "I just want to say something quickly," she announced. The room hushed. I felt that old instinct flicker. What now? But I stayed still. "I'm proud of both my daughters," she said. A simple sentence. But the way she said it, there was no comparison in it. No weighing one against the other. Just truth. She looked at my sister first, smiling softly. "And I can't wait to meet this little one." Then her eyes moved to me. "And I'm proud of the life you built. The strength it took, even when we didn't always see it. A pause, not awkward. Earned. I didn't tear up. I didn't look away. I just nodded. Because for once, I didn't need to prove anything in that moment. After the small speeches and games, people started to relax again. Conversations split into corners. Laughter came easier. I stepped outside for some air. The evening was quiet, a soft breeze cutting through the noise inside. A minute later, my sister joined me. She leaned against the railing beside me, exhaling slowly. "Remember your wedding?" she asked. I smiled faintly. "Hard to forget," she nodded. "I think about that moment a lot." I didn't say anything. "I used to think I won that night," she admitted. That caught my attention. "But I didn't," she continued. "You didn't fight me. You didn't expose me. You didn't even try to take the attention back in a way that would embarrass me." I glanced at her. "You just stood there. And somehow, that made everything I did feel small." I let her words settle. "That's because it wasn't about you anymore," I said quietly. "It was about me finally choosing myself." She nodded, looking out into the distance. "I'm still learning how to do that," she said. I believed her. Not because she said the right thing, but because she didn't rush to fill the silence after. We stood there for a while, not needing to say more. Inside, someone called her name. She turned to go, then paused. "Hey," she said, looking back at me. "When the baby comes, I want you there." I raised an eyebrow slightly. "You sure?" She smiled. "Yeah. I don't want to do this alone anymore." I nodded once. "Then I'll be there." She went back inside. I stayed a moment longer. The sky was dimming. That soft between time where everything feels like it's shifting without you noticing. And I realized something. The revenge I thought I wanted. The moment where she felt what I felt. Where everything balanced out perfectly. It had already happened. Not when the room went silent. Not when people finally saw me. But in every moment after. Where I no longer needed to compete, react, or prove. Because the most satisfying part of all of this wasn't that she changed. It was that I did. I walked back inside, not searching for attention, not measuring anything. Just present. Just steady. And for the first time in my life, in a room where she once took everything, there was nothing left for her to take. Because I had already claimed what was. I thought that was where the story would finally settle. But life has a quiet way of testing whether you've really changed. Or if you're just comfortable for the moment. The call came late at night. My sister. I almost didn't pick up. Old reflex. Old distance. But something told me this wasn't one of those moments. "Hey." Her voice was tight. "I think it's time." Everything in me shifted instantly. "I'm coming." No hesitation. No overthinking. Just movement. The drive to the hospital felt longer than it actually was. The roads were mostly empty. The streetlights passing in a steady rhythm. Like something counting down. When I got there, she was already in a room. Not glowing. Not performing. Just human. Scared. She looked at me the second I walked in, and I saw it. The same person who once needed every room to revolve around her. Now holding on to the edge of something much bigger than attention. "You came," she whispered. I nodded, stepping closer. I said I would. She reached for my hand without asking, and I gave it. Hours passed. No drama, no grand speeches. Just quiet support, steady breathing. The kind of presence that doesn't need to announce itself. At one point, she squeezed my hand so tightly I thought she might break it. "I don't think I can do this," she said, her voice shaking. I leaned in slightly. "You can." Not loud. Not dramatic. Just certain. And for the first time in our lives, she didn't look around for anyone else's reaction. She just listened. To me. When the baby finally cried, something in the room shifted in a way I can't fully explain. Not excitement. Not relief. Something deeper. Final, complete. They placed the baby in her arms and she just stared. No words. No performance. No need to share the moment with anyone else. Just her. I stood a little back, giving her space. And I realized something I hadn't expected to feel. I wasn't comparing this moment to mine. I wasn't measuring who had more attention, more importance. I was just there, at peace. After a while, she looked up at me, her eyes softer than I had ever seen them. "Do you want to hold her?" That question carried everything we had been through. I stepped forward slowly, carefully, and when she placed the baby in my arms, it felt like something unspoken finally settled between us. No competition, no tension. No past pulling at the edges, just trust. "She's beautiful," I said quietly. My sister smiled, tired but real. "Yeah, she is." A few minutes later, my mother walked in. She froze for a second, taking in the scene, me standing there, holding the baby, my sister watching calmly. No chaos, no imbalance, just stillness. Her eyes filled, but she didn't rush forward. She didn't interrupt, she just stood there taking it in. And I think in that moment, she saw it too. Everything had changed. Not loudly, not all at once, but completely. Later, when things settled and the room quieted down, I handed the baby back gently. My sister looked at me for a long second. "Thank you," she said. I shook my head slightly. "You don't have to thank me." "I do," she replied. "Because you stayed even when I didn't deserve it before." I didn't rush to correct her. Didn't soften it. I just said, "We're not there anymore." And we weren't. That version of us, the one built on competition, on taking and losing, on silence and resentment, it didn't exist in that room. On my way out of the hospital, I paused for a second in the hallway. Everything felt quiet. Not empty, just calm. And I thought back to that moment at my wedding. The interruption. The way my voice had been cut off. The way I had stood there, invisible for a second that felt like forever. If someone had told me, then, that this is where it would lead, I wouldn't have believed them. Because I thought revenge meant getting even. I thought it meant making her feel what I felt. But standing there now, replaying everything in my mind, I understood something much deeper. The real shock of what happened next wasn't that I got my moment back. It was that I stopped needing to take it from anyone at all. And somehow, that changed her more than anything I could have done to her. I walked out into the night, the air cool and still. No weight on my chest, no unfinished feelings, just closure. Not the loud kind. Not the kind people clap for. But the kind you feel in your bones.